Down a Dark Hall is your typical American ghost horror movie starring Uma Therman, Sophia, Robb, and Issabelle Furhman. Sophia Robb is the little girl from Soul Surfer, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, and my personal favourite, The Bridge to Terabithia.
What do we call this place?
Terabithia.
That's always my favourite part. It's got Uma Therman in it.
Wiggle your big toe.
Issabelle Furhman is the little creepy girl out of The Orphan. If you haven't watched that, I also highly recommend that. Down a Dark Hall is written by Michael Goldbach, and it's directed by Rodrigo Cortez, who directed things like Buried and Red Lights. It's a pretty fun movie, but it's definitely made for teens who haven't sunk their teeth into the horror genre yet. If you're a horror buff and you really like to get your juices flowing over a good scary movie, then this probably isn't for you. But if you're just dipping your pinky toe into the horror scene, it's a pretty fun movie. So basically there's 5 badass troubled teens who were failing in normal school, and they get put into this creepy boarding school in the middle of nowhere. Uma Therman plays the head mistress, who is a French woman named Madame Dury. She kind of handpicks the subjects that they will do best at. The 5 subjects that they do are all different. Each girl has to excel in one particular subject, and that's kind of what she's nurtured in the most. The character Kit has a brief history with music and piano, so they nurture her to be in the music class and really learn how to play piano. There's other things like English, maths, poetry and painting. I found that the set design of this movie was really good, and everything you saw you actually really believed was in a castle. Nothing ever looked like it was on set, and it didn't have what seemed to be fake lighting or like fake props, with the old cliche, pull the curtain off the mirror or off an old piano and there was just dust everywhere and crappy spider webs and all that kind of stuff. They did a really good job with the set design and making sure that it felt like a real authentic castle. I also feel that they nailed the lighting and the mood throughout this movie. So this movie was pretty dark. It really gave you a claustrophobic feel. So when they were looking down hallways, everything was vignetted and all the corners were all dark and you couldn't see it. And everything was candlelit, and they kept talking about how they didn't have any power, and so they all had to walk around with matches, and all the girls were, the typical badasses, so they all smoked and had lighters that gave really cool authentic lighting throughout the movie. I feel like that nailed that on the head. You heard everything in this movie, which was amazing. Just be a girl painting and you'd hear the brush strokes and the different textures of the canvas she'd be using. And then on the other side of that, when it goes into the music class, was really nice, amazing old school music on a piano. It really sucked you into believing that there was an actual orchestra there, but it was just this really talented girl on the piano. And a movie like that, when it's set in this big castle, you could really hear the difference acoustically. So when they were in their room, there was carpet and then there was a 4-post bed, and it really blocked in the different sounds, so the characters weren't so isolated. You could really feel the difference of that in the story. So they were alone running away from a dark shadow in the hallway, but then they'd be alone in their bedroom, but it's that little comfort safety zone of the bedroom that makes everyone feel safe. I think they nailed that on the head. The CGI in this movie was lacking, however. I felt like a lot of it didn't need to be there and it was just added in on top. The CGI in movies is really supposed to enhance the story, not distract you and think to yourself, oh, that's bad CGI. I feel like it was a bit too much of a distraction than it was, an addition to a movie. It didn't really help to tell the story. There was a few different things that they added into it, like dust falling and rain, and there was a really bad scene with birds that was added to CGI, and it was really quite distracting from the story, and instead of, bringing you into that environment and showing you, hey, this is where we are and this is what's happening, really brought you out of that environment that they were trying to make. I feel like that they could have done the CGI a little bit more sparingly than what it was, because the set design of this place was absolutely amazing. I feel like the pacing and editing of this movie, it never went one way or the other. It would always veer in one direction, but then go back to the safety of being the grey man, and I think that's why it comes undone. There's nothing really memorable about this movie. The pacing of this movie was just all over the shop. I felt like it was a bit slow at parts and then really fast in others, and then it was, trying to be a different genre altogether, and it was a bit, choppy and changey. There was even a part where it turned into like an Edgar Wright cut, where it was just like cut to the beat. I feel like that really took away from the story that they were trying to tell. This movie is nothing like we haven't seen before, but in saying that, there was some original storytelling elements. The main plot of this movie was quite original, but it lacked in its execution. I feel like it was nothing that we haven't seen before, and all the things, that come with ghost movies, it had it as well. always talking about how when you open up a portal, you don't really control what comes in.
Sometimes when the door to the other side is open, it's difficult to control what comes in.
It just kind of became cliched for a ghost movie. Overall, I'd give Down a Dark Hall a 5 out of 10, and I'd compare it to 2018's Winchester with Helen Mirren. It had that same kind of feel and vibe to it, so if you liked Winchester, you'll probably like this. If you liked this, then you'll probably like Winchester if you haven't seen it. This has been fun. Let me know what you thought about Down a Dark Hall, and if you'd like me to review any other movies, let me know. Thanks a lot.